Zig coming in on the top. Today we have a very different show than per usual. As opposed to just one interview, this features an array of interviews from artists who were in Rooms to Let. Rooms to Let, traditionally set in vacant houses set for demolition, Rooms to Let is using these spaces to transform the historic Broadway East 55th neighborhood. Working with local artists and business owners, the project uses adapted temporary and semi-permanent installations to beautify storefronts and grass lots in Slavic Village. How I was involved with Rooms to Let was I was part of a pirate radio. My friends, Ladybug AV Club, they put together a room that was made up of all these crazy old analog TVs and had live performances in this space. They recorded it to tape, and then they were broadcasting it on an open radio spot during the whole process. While they had dead air in between artists playing, which I played there as well, they played interview clips of the other artists around them that we pre-recorded. And that's what you're going to hear today. This is my pirate radio plugs from artists from Rooms to Let. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our frantic interview series. Here's Owen from Balloon Song.
My name is Owen Lowery. Other than being just some random dude, I am an interactive artist. I'm based out of Pittsburgh, but I grew up in Cleveland. And for Rooms to Let, I am working on a project called Balloon Song. It's an installation that uses a bunch of, like a whole heck of a bunch of box fans blowing up from the floor.
Yeah.
And they have webcams on them, and when you put, and I'll have balloons out, and you put balloons over them, and the balloons will get kind of caught up in the vortex of each of these fans, and the webcam will track the color, the position and motion of the balloons, and that color or position or motion gets translated into keyboard keystrokes and plays music based on that. So each of the different fans has different instruments for it, but there will be 3 different colors. So like anytime you put blue, it will be atmospheric sounds. So maybe synthesizer sounds that are atmospheric, or sound effects, wind, bird song, things like that. Every time you put yellow on it, it'll be instruments. So whether that be like violin, plucking, things like that. And then every time you put red on it, it will be human sounds. So vocalization or distorted vocalization. But every single fan is different, but those things are consistent.
That's incredible. Yeah. Wow, that's really cool.
So I am in the Jedona. What is it? Jedona, floor 1. Yeah. It's like the old bank building.
Okay.
Bank building.
Very
and I'm in the back garagey area, which might have been its vault. But it's got really, really like a lot of echo and reverb in there. So, and it's also right by, they're building the ADA ramp. So, or the ramp for accessibility and universal design is just such a big, like, part of my art practice that I was like super excited to. I was like, yeah, put me as close to like the wheelchair ramp entrance as possible, because I like that stuff.
Right. No, that's awesome. So, to get to the medium that you're doing now, were you a musician? Are you a musician? Is that your kind of main outlet? Is this, or like, what's your kind of main medium?
No, my main medium is no medium. I'm an interactive artist,
awesome.
so like. I've always been one of those, like, before I started doing art, I did motion graphics, I did animation, I did video. I've been in bands my whole life, except for, the last, like, 10 years. But, like, always playing music. So, like, it's every time I make work, ever since I, like, started to do work as an artist and take on an art practice as opposed to doing, like, business work or business to business or things like that, I fell in love with the idea of universal design. So universal design is the idea that you design something that can be accessible to anyone regardless of their like age, height, socioeconomic background, their physical accessibility situation, emotional or mental or anything like that. And so by being a person who like has always played in a bunch of different realms of media, it just works for me that like I make stuff that involves sight, sound, and touch. So like I'm always starting from a place of like I want to integrate as many human senses as possible. And so like my background just kind of melded into that pretty well. But that's like really where I start from. And my goal as an artist is just to create situations that reward curiosity, reward and encourage and foster curiosity, because that's like the only, being a fairly privileged person in my life and like generally privileged, like I don't think I've got any good philosophy on life other than the fact that I think curiosity is mostly good. And so I just try to encourage and reward curiosity so people are going to be a little more curious outside of the art world and in their everyday lives. So that's my whole spiel right there. I just gave you the spiel of me.
I love it, man. And I think that's really well said. And one thing I think one important part is like, sometimes like playing music or doing something like that can seem challenging, therefore scary and not something someone wants to do. So to have it as interactive, like you've been describing it, and making it so everyone can just get curious and grow from that curiosity, I think is really cool and powerful.
Yeah, like, a long time ago, I realized like, anything I try to do conceptually, like I have concepts in a lot of my artwork, but I just don't like, we're all individuals who have all come from different backgrounds, different life situations, different experiences. So to expect somebody to A, get what I'm saying, and B, like relate to it seems like a really big ask of anyone. So like instead it's like, how about you bring the meaning or the concepts or whatever like works for you, and I'll just make these curious situations that I feel have value and have that aspect of like play and exploration, so somebody can explore and make music or make visuals or make other things through exploration, play, and curiosity. Because I don't have any, like I said, I've got no good philosophies on life that work for anybody other than me, because I've only seen the world through my filter.
Well, I think that itself is a great philosophy for
and that works really well for me, but I don't think I can shove it on every human being in the world. So
that's awesome.
So through my art, I just want to like get people to be curious, and that's what matters to me.
Beautiful. And where can someone find your past works, or outside of Rooms to Let? Where can people see what you're up to?
So in person, I end up having things a lot of like more public spaces. So the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, I've got a few artworks up there, interactive touch projection kind of stuff. Usually around like the Pittsburgh area, you'll find things of mine. The children's hospitals, I get a lot of like children's hospital, like places for like children's and families, not because I'm really an artist for those things, but because exploration and curiosity is my jam. Like that's like, it just fits there really well. Online, there's owenlowery.com. That's Lowery. And that's where like, this is my website. Or I have an Instagram. It's O as in Owen, B as in Brian, Lowery, Lowery. That's my Instagram, OB Lowery. It's not O Blow, even though many of my friends will say, "Oh, what's up, O Blow?" now because of that. But those are like places that they can find my work. I'll have, if they come to Rooms to Let, I'll have my digital gumballs out, which are just, instead of cards, I have a gumball machine, and it's free, and you can get this little slip of paper that has my information, but it also has like a code on it that you can put into a website, and it will make a one-of-a-kind piece of generative digital art that you own, because that little piece of paper with my info is also a certificate of authenticity. And I just dropped a screw while talking to you, and it's very small and hard to find on my floor.
Well, Owen, on that note, thank you so much for taking time. I'm very excited to meet you, man. This sounds like a really cool exhibit, and good luck finding that screw.
I got it, and I'm screwing it in. Perfect.
What
was your name one more time?
My name's Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciation. I hope everything goes well with talking to people, because reaching artists is like wrangling meerkats. Not just cats, but cats that hide underground, but are like really cool looking, but also elusive.
Well said. Definitely, it's been that so far. But you've brought more energy my way. I'm ready to take on more of them. So on that note,
All right.
I'll see you when you're in Ohio, my friend.
All right. Be safe, be sound. I'll see you around.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Peace.
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL, The Bug. That was an installation of our frantic interview series. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL, The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our frantic interview series, recorded out of the bowels of the smoke-surrounded van. Here is Jess from Visitors.
Yeah, I am Jess Sheeran, and I'm going to be doing like the landing space in the Deco building, that old historic building in Slavic Village. My installation is called The Visitors. Yeah, so I'm going to be setting up kind of like a dining room table scene where these very, very interesting and elaborate creatures, I'm a creature maker, will be sitting around a table, hanging out, doing whatever. I'm still kind of finalizing some of the details and some of the features on these creatures, but they're going to be in there, and you can walk around, you can interact with them, you can make up your story, what goes along, what they're doing. So yeah, I'm still sort of planning everything, but that's the general idea. You'll be able to definitely walk around and see them in person.
Very cool. I think, were you there before? I think I remember seeing like some type of, the big creature statues, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last year I did a big green one.
Okay, cool. And so what influenced you to make that type of art, or how did that become your medium?
Well, I've been doing like little handheld creatures as my full-time job, like little stuffed animals, for a long time, and I'm trying to get into the installation world and work on a bigger scale, and Rooms to Let is the perfect outlet for that for me.
Very cool. And where can someone find your work now outside of Rooms to Let?
Right now I do wholesale pretty much exclusively. I switched to wholesale, so I'm only doing I have one customer. They're huge though. It's Malta entertainment company. So you can find my critters. They're called Cool Critters in the gift shop in Santa Fe there. So I've been switching to wholesale, and that's been working out really well for me. But I also like branching out and doing bigger installation work and just huge creatures, because I'm kind of obsessed with that.
That's awesome. Is this something were you into making puppets or something or was there sculpting in your education that really kind of brought out this interest in it with your own avenue for it? Or did you know someone around you?
No, people ask me that a lot, and I really don't know where the inspiration came from. I bought a sewing machine, and I just remember altering clothes in college, learning to do that. And I also came into, a bag of just fur scraps from somebody, or they were cheap or something. And I made my first little stuffy. And I kept on working with fur. So I got better at working with fur. So I think I'm better at working with fur than I am easier fabrics. And most people would say the opposite.
Awesome. Well, Jess, thank you so much for chatting with me really quickly. One more time, where can everyone find your exhibit at Rooms to Let?
I don't know the name of the building. It's not committed to memory yet, but there's only two buildings. It's the building with the more artists will be in the building. It's the old Art Deco building.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing it, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL, The Bug. That was an installation of our frantic interview series. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL, The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our frantic interview series. Up next, we have Meryl Engler.
Well, my name is Meryl, and I am an artist that's working primarily in woodcut and printmaking, works on paper. I will be on the second floor of the main building that this year's Rooms to Let is happening. And I have one of the front spaces. It's quite a large space. And I will be kind of making, I guess I could say, like a meditation / contemplative area through like abstract art. I'm really inspired by the Rothko Chapel for this project. So I have large abstract pieces, and I will have some pieces that will be lying flat on this giant table that was already located in the room. And it kind of acts a little bit like a reflecting pool in a way. There are these big carved wood panels. So it's the same kind of technique that I would use to carve a woodcut, except I just painted the panels themselves.
That sounds awesome. It's interesting, like the kind of abstractness that kind of like brings that mindful or kind of like thought-provoking like headspace. You know?
Yeah. I think because the viewer isn't necessarily looking at something that they can easily recognize. It allows kind of more imagination or some like imaginative thoughtfulness to happen. And I really love the use of reflecting pools in like Islamic architecture, because you have all of those patterns being used and they're reflecting like in the pool. So it creates this really interesting, not exactly figure ground relationship, but like building ground relationship. And I'm really inspired by that and those patterns and the looking down and having a space to kind of wander in your mind.
Yeah, it's also interesting too that like a reflecting pond's kind of like a natural thing. Water's a natural thing, kind of reflecting something that's like human made in it. But it's almost like in the same way, like when you look at nature, it doesn't have to mean anything, but it could also mean everything.
Yeah. I love the use of pattern to implement like or indicate space and spatial awareness, because it is flat, but having some sort of like abstract pattern kind of creates depth in that flatness to me. And I think that that's really a fun thing to try to figure out. One day I will figure out how to do an actual reflecting pool in a gallery, but that day has not come yet.
Yet
but that's
being
a
the
goal.
keyword. Yet being the keyword.
Yeah.
Is this so like as far as your creative journey, has it always been kind of more this mindful, like thoughtful, like art that's inspired you?
Yeah, I would say I don't work as abstractly as I used to. And a lot of the pieces that I'm using for this installation are kind of repurposed from older work, but showing it in a new context and in a completely new installation setting and in a new way, which is always kind of exciting for me. But I am working, I would say less abstractly, but I think that pattern and abstract elements really play an important role in my work, because it adds a level, I would say like almost like magical realism, where it takes a piece, even if the piece is a realistic depiction of something, it kind of like takes it out of this is just a copy of something happening in real life to me, or it adds like a level of specialness. So I've been using patterns and kind of abstract elements in my work for a really long time. It was definitely a very freeing for me. I had been at a point in my like artistic life in grad school when I couldn't be bothered to draw and worry about proportion and worry about like, does it look right or anything? And working abstractly kind of freed me from those limitations and helped me push through. I don't know if it was like art block or something. It just helped me work at the speed and the like gesturalness that I needed at the time. And that has definitely kind of stayed with me.
It's interesting because like we learn all these like structures and formats and things of how like methodologies of how to make something and how to like properly kind of reflect a statement, if it's written, if it's played, or if it's or painted or whatever it is. There's an exception of this looks like I made a truck and it looks exactly like it. But it's almost like the mastering of the expression comes after like being able to do that so easily, or not easily, but with plenty of time and painstakingly. But after hours of and years of learning that skill, it's interesting that the true expression kind of comes when you can kind of murk the waters, so to say, and like represent a truck in a way, but like knowing these rules and then doing everything you know how to, breaking these rules intentionally.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that like at certain points in our lives, when maybe it's something is more like emotional or like energetic, just movement and like forms that come from movement are a really good way to kind of get that out, instead of thinking of an object or like a realistic imagery or something like that. So I will say that like my most recent work is moving a little bit more towards like figurative, but with the abstract elements, with the use of patterns, really trying to capture certain like magical contemplative moments. But it definitely comes from that time when I was working purely abstract and with pattern. So I think that it's interesting doing an installation in a space like this because it almost merges the two together, because I create the installation and then people inhabit it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm working with now. So it's kind of a fun way to look at that and think about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see your work. Is there anywhere people can look up where you, like your current, like other projects you're working on and stuff you've done in the past?
Yeah, I have an Instagram, and it's Meryl _art. So MERYLE_ART is my Instagram handle. I also have a website that is sorely out of date. I really need to update that. But it's merylengler.wixsite.com. And I'll probably have like a signage at the show as well. But the Instagram is kind of where I've been posting my process videos and my newest works. So that's the fun one to follow. I try.
Yeah, the websites always take like an extra. At least when I do it, it takes like you got to sit down and do it. It's like you can't just post it as you're going.
Do it on the fly.
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, we talk to Mary Deffer.
My name is Mary Deffer. I am an artist and photographer. I'm based in Lakewood, Ohio. I work primarily with analog photographic processes, and for Rooms to Let this year, I'll be in the Jeanetta building on the first floor. My installation is of lumens, and so lumens are analog photographic prints that I make using darkroom photo paper that's light sensitive. Then I lay plants on top of that paper and I expose it to light. So I'm sourcing all of the plant material from Slavic Village. I've been walking around and finding some things like on the side of the road, on the side of the bike path there. And I've also partnered with a number of community members who have donated clippings from their own gardens and yards. Lumens are pretty unique in that I'm using mostly black and white photo paper, And even though it's black and white, once I expose it to the sun, all these colors emerge. So blues, peaches, purples, pinks. And so it's unique in that way. And then they are also unique because the colors, if I fix the images, which is immerse them in photo fixer to make them permanent, all the colors fade away. So my installation is composed of digital reproductions of the original colorful lumens, and then I'll also have some originals interspersed with the reproductions, and the originals will shift throughout the weekend since they'll be continually exposed to light.
Wow. So it's a really temporary. How'd you come across this process?
So I love looking into analog photo processes, and there are so many different approaches that you can take. And I heard about this process, I think back in college, and didn't ever experiment with it until last summer. And I got pretty interested in making them, and then had this idea to do it for Rooms to Let.
That's cool. I did a photography in high school, and it's such an interesting process because it's so beyond what you think it is as a kid. And you're just take a picture.
Yeah.
And now for most kids, it's going to be a completely different experience unless they dive into the analog realm of it. But another thing I'd be interested in, through gathering these different plants and from Slavic Village, have you noticed, I don't know how far you are into the developing everything, but have you noticed a pattern of specific colors that these plants make?
So it's been a real range. I'm also using a variety of paper too.
Okay.
Some of the paper is expired, and some of the paper is fogged. So that means it's been accidentally exposed to light, and you wouldn't be able to use it to make a crisp print in the darkroom. So the variety of papers have really been giving a variety of colors. It's been interesting, I think, in just the range of plants that I have been able to get. People have been really generous and have given me a lot of different varieties to work with, which has been really exciting.
Is it it'd be, this might be a deeper question. Does the plant life kind of represent what you're seeing in Slavic Village, and maybe on a grander scale what Rooms to Let kind of brings?
So I think it's kind of I guess there are certain plants that are native to North, or I think they're native. I'm not sure actually if mulberry is native per se to Northeast Ohio, but there are certain plants that I've gotten that are things you would see just walking around the neighborhood. But then some of the other plants I've gotten are a little bit more, maybe not as native to Northeast Ohio or to Slavic Village, I guess. Does that answer the question?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, with kind of the process of putting these plants through this development and seeing what they kind of what they create, does that kind of represent, I guess, your experience of, I guess, gathering these plants and meeting these people? Does the blade of grass look more beautiful when you see it through this different light, I guess, is what I was curious to see if you noticed.
Yeah, I think it's really the process is pretty magical and transformative, as you were saying. Even really outwardly super simple clippings that may not be as visually interesting when you're just checking them out in real life, are kind of transformed into these ephemeral, otherworldly versions of themselves. And I think kind of the nature of the prints being ephemeral in that they're going to keep shifting if they're exposed to light, that ephemerality kind of itself mirrors like sometimes the uncertain futures of buildings in Slavic Village as well.
I think that's a beautiful comparison.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Is this something you got into before diving head first into it as a career? Is this something you kind of dove into in high school as well, or is this something you found later?
So do you mean like the lumen process or analog photography?
Analog photography.
Okay. So I also am an educator. I work at a high school in the main office, and I teach workshops through the Cleveland Print Room too, which is a community darkroom in the area. And I didn't get into analog until I was in college. Like my high school had a darkroom, and I was always really interested in wanting to learn analog photography. But my schedule never worked out for me to take that darkroom class at the high school level. So when I went into college, I went to a liberal arts school, and I hadn't declared a major when I started, but I knew first class I wanted to enroll in was a darkroom photo class. And I was finally able to get in there, and it was just so fun and amazing, and I've been hooked ever since.
That's awesome. And you said as outside of Rooms to Let, you're located in Lakewood?
Yep, I am.
Okay. And is that where we can? Is that I guess? Or let me rephrase that. Where can everyone go to find your work outside of Rooms to Let and current projects or future projects?
Yeah. So as I said, I do a lot of work with the Cleveland Print Room. I am a teaching artist, so I do occasional workshops there. Next year, I'll have along with 3 other photographers, we will have a show through the print room. So that'll happen in 2024. And then I also, I guess, would you want me to share social media, that sort of thing too?
Yeah. If you have a site, or if you prefer Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah. So my art website is marydeffer.com. So my name, Mary, and then my last name, DEFER.com. And my Instagram page is at Mary_Deffer, DEFER.
Awesome, Mary. Well, thank you so much for chatting me for a bit, and I really think that's a cool exhibit. I'm excited to see it.
Thank you so much, Dave. I haven't been...
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, we're going to talk to Eric about what peace looks like.
Yeah, my name is Eric Tuck-Macalla. The name of the exhibit is What Does Peace Look Like? I was commissioned by Cleveland Peace Action to do the work of art. And I'm sorry, I don't know the building that it's in. Oh, sure. Yeah, it's a sculpture. It's a sculpture for the most part, and there'll be some wall pieces. In essence, what I've done was taken artwork that was inspired by students from Lincoln West High School. Some of the refugee students that go to Lincoln West High School. Some of my interviews with them were that was given to the students in the digital photography class. They produced works based on what those interviews, and my involvement in this is to take those works of art and put them into a framework. So they'll be, for the most part, photos that'll be laminated onto a sculpture
Very
for
cool.
my piece.
Yeah. It's how long, like, through kind of going through all those, like, examples of peace and what peace means to bring to all these people, what's your kind of takeaway?
Well, the takeaway for the most part is just with talking, most of the kids that I talked to, the refugees, they were born in refugee camps in Africa and Tanzania and Congo. To them, what they started, first off, they talked about food, that there was a lot of food insecurity in the camps. So abundance of food, secure housing, educational opportunities, especially for the girls, educational opportunities for the girls. And when I put that to the kids in the digital photography class, what they came up was really normal, exuberant, happy life that they have here in this country. When I started out thinking about this project, I thought, when Cleveland Peace Action basically gave me a blank slate, and I thought, well, how can I really know peace if I've really not known war? And in this country, most of us really haven't experienced war on our shores in our country. So that's why I went to these refugees, because they did know, even if they weren't in the wars themselves. Like I said, their parents had stories, and their parents were separated from their original countries, living in refugee camps for 10, 20 years. So it kind of affected me when I heard those stories, and that's why I wrapped it into this piece.
That's beautiful. I can't. It's crazy to think, like, what they describe as peace is kind of like every day. Just
right.
Enough food, enough. That's really moving. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, thank you so much for chatting me for a little bit. Is there anywhere else anyone listening can find other work or future work you're going to do?
Right off the top of my head, I don't have any in the works right now. Well, no, I'm sorry. I take that back. I have a piece at Pinwheel Gallery. I'm sorry. A piece at Pinwheel, or two pieces at Pinwheel Gallery. Right now they're showing. They will show until late August or September. I have an opening, actually, it will be July 15th, and that's in Cincinnati. A piece of sculpture down there at PAR Projects. Actually just dropped that piece off yesterday. So that'll be open also into September.
Awesome. And do you have a website?
I do. Yeah, it's Tuck-Macalla.com. There's no hyphen in there. And that's my website. Yep.
Awesome. All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, we talk to Cara Gaetano.
Okay, my name is Cara Gaetano. I'm a mixed media artist and photographer living in Cleveland. And the piece that I have created came about from some research I was doing about Slavic Village. When I found out about Rooms to Let, I started researching the history of the area, and I found this really great photo from the early 1900s of a main street in Slavic Village. And what I envisioned was kind of like its heyday. There were all these businesses open and people walking down the street and just kind of the bustling city streets of the time. And I really liked the image. A lot of the work I do is in a Victorian style anyway, so it really resonated with me, that time period. And so I wanted to recreate that scene, kind of what I envision it to be, not identical, but with some of my own mixed media pieces in a street level storefront window. And I was actually fortunate, and they gave me 3 very large windows. And so what I am making is, like I said, kind of a recreation of a busy city. Or let me back up for a second, if you can cut that part out. What I'm recreating is what people from the time would have looked like, on a city street in that period in the neighborhood. And I print out the images, and then I stain them, I paint them, I kind of age them so they're appropriate to the time anyway. And yeah, I'll be affixing them to the window, and viewers can see them from the outside and kind of transport themselves back to, what the street might have looked like back then.
That's really cool. It's interesting. My girlfriend works at the library, so we get to look at some of the old photos of Cleveland and like kind of see like that transformation of one thing being like either super busy and super bumping to like the opposite. And it's kind of a weird duality to step in and out of that like time, being on a street that's completely empty, or vice versa, completely packed when it wasn't,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was kind of my thought, because I know that I have a sense that Slavic Village is really growing and there's a lot of development, on deck for the future. But when I saw this picture and I just thought of it now, there's just such a difference in, just the neighborhood. And so, yeah, like I said, it resonated with me and I wanted to recreate that.
So was photography always your medium, or is this something you kind of grew into?
Photography is my main one. I've been doing that since high school, actually, but mixed media is something I probably started more in college. And so I incorporated it in my work here and there. But for this piece, I'm doing only mixed media.
Awesome. And lastly, do you have any future projects coming up or past projects that we can see? And if so, do you have a website or a plug for the next event?
Let's see. I actually have an opening the night before Rooms to Let in Pittsburgh.
Nice. All right. So my Pittsburgh confusion wasn't too far off.
Yeah, no, not at all. So nothing on deck after that. I do teach at the Cleveland Print Room, though, and I have my own Instagram page and one for my teaching business that I do on my own. And mine is Cara Mia Photo. And my teaching business one is Ethereal Aperture Photo. And I did give those to Lynn. So if they need spelled out or anything, it's in the info.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. I urge you to just dive full immerse into a geometric room, basically.
Oh man,
or at least that style of art.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of like what if I'm given anything to use to paint or draw with. Like it's just kind of what flows out of me. Geometry and patterns. I feel like it's just stuff I've been drawing since I was a kid, and would spend time at school in class, taking just during like while the teacher's teaching would just be throwing down these patterns in my notebooks and just filling notebooks with them basically, and kind of just never. It's just like an obsession, I guess I'd say. It's really enjoyable for me and just infinite basically. So this has been an experiment for me. I've never really gotten to fill a whole entire room, like all the walls and the floor. I didn't do the ceiling, but I put cardboard on the floors and so working on the floor right now as well. And what else was I going to say on that? Oh, just that like, it's just kind of is my style, I guess. Basically, it's very geometric, I guess. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you like? I imagine doing that. There's kind of like the doing of making the pattern. There's like a kind of like a almost I'd imagine like Zen-like state, like a kind of focus on one thing and just seeing it expand. Do you like kind of is that your experience? And when you look at work that's done, is it kind of that same emotional or same kind of space you get into?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely consider painting for me. For sure, it's like spiritual practice, kind of. It's very meditative for me, and can get into that kind of flow-like state. And I mean, I guess it depends too. I mean, if there's people there with me, it's a different experience of trying to focus on the paint in the brush while also talking to somebody. But usually, when I'm painting in the solitude by myself, like it definitely is a very very groovy experience, I'd say. Yeah, definitely just like receiving a lot of calm feelings, equanimity, definitely boost my vibes for sure.
That's awesome.
So like, I only hope that people that experience and see my work too, and like look at it, also feel some good vibey feelings as well. Definitely.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me for a bit, and I look forward to seeing your exhibit at Rooms to Let.
No worries. Thanks for having me. This was very fun and super easy. That was so chill. That was a blast. Thanks.
You got it. All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL, The Bug. That was an installation of our Frantic interview series. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL, The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, we talk to the artist behind Greater Purpose Acquired.
My name is Stephanie Stewart.
And I'm Kyla Decatur.
And we are P31 Art and Design.
Whoa.
We are partnering with Rooms to Let to bring you an interactive art piece that addresses the concerns of creativity and individuality within the classroom. We are located on the second floor in room 2K. So we are, I'll let our papermaker tell you, Kyla.
Okay.
So our public art piece it incorporates 4 6-foot handmade pieces of paper with a poem just expressing the creativity
of success.
Yeah, the creativity of success, and we know the suppression of creativity in the school, in the schools.
And we are we're drawing inspiration from the Herman Melville quote, "It is better to fail in originality than to succeed in imitation."
I think that's well said. Is this and this is interesting because this is, as anyone who does anything creative, which is everybody to some degree in in some aspects of your life, it's hard to. And I notice I work with kids as well, and I notice it a lot with kids now. It's really hard to do something and fail at it. It's really hard for people to not get something right away. So that skill set and that the praising to that kind of practicing that failure of the practice of failure, of doing something, maybe not landing it, but growing from that is such an important thing. And that's a huge part of the creative process. And in some degrees, eventually helps us determine what we define as success. So I think that's a super impactful project to partake to dive into. Is this can you talk a little bit about your guys' journey with that? Was that something that kind of came easy to you? Because some people are just really good at just doing them and messing up until they get it right, and some don't have that same experience.
Well, actually, we created our company. It's a COVID company. And so we created our company during the year 2020, where Kyla, she was actually coming out of high school, and we're like, oh my goodness, what's next? Yeah. And Kyla actually takes on an unconventional way of learning, where she's more hands-on, and was she, like most high school graduates, you kind of go through a young adult period where you're like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to go. Some people have it all figured out, and some people just don't. And she has always been an artist at heart. And so together we were able to create this company where we can kind of hone in on and give her time and space to figure out, okay, what kind of adult do I want to be? And where do I want to place my expertise and my creativity? Where can I put that in the world? And so with that, that's why we have like our art project focuses in the classroom, because that was something that as her parent and now business partner, I kind of realized that she was struggling with, because the school's telling you, okay, if you do A, B, and C and you walk this path, you're going to be successful. But what about those students that are walking kind of off the beaten path and they are cutting through the forest a little bit? How come they're not stamped as successful? And so that's what we built our company on, and that's what we've decided to do our project on.
It's a really interesting like lane, because you're right. A lot of if you're doing everything right, you're gonna get it. You're gonna do great.
Yep.
But all the people that usually you find studying did something off the beaten path. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even that Robert Frost poems about that. You know what I mean? Like all these people we kind of learn from. But it's interesting how it's not as celebrated, or it's not as encouraged or enriched to stray from what everyone else is doing.
Our history as Americans is just that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Like America wouldn't be here if we didn't have the Revolutionary War, and we were like, yeah, let's, we demand this and we want to be different than the world. And that's kind of what we have built our government on, and our social viewpoints and aspects, and just everything. The whole climate of America is built on being that individual, and all at the same time it's challenged because we're, how much of an individual can we be? And so our school system even is built off of that, just with the Common Core, new math and new, ways of writing a simple sentence. It's challenging. And so it's something that we need to bring attention to.
Yeah. It was my going to school. I went to like an early college, so I was a high school student and a college student. So I kind of got the best of both worlds when it came to just being a regular degular high school student, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do and in college, and how to balance just passing, like ethics and those tricky classes that kind of make you want to think outside of the box. And that's kind of when I realized that I wasn't a regular student. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
Life. But that's kind of when I realized that I wasn't a regular student, and that I needed to just learn in a different way and in a different environment than the average classes that you see now. And that's why this piece is so important to me, because I want to just show the older people and the younger people who still might not know what they want to do with life, and just encourage them to know that it is okay to embrace their creativity, no matter what stage of life you're in. If you don't have a college degree, that is okay. Figure out what you love to do and then succeed. Find what it means to be successful in your own words.
I think that's really well said. And you guys are super inspiring. That's so cool. That's so cool. You can both dive into this and come up with this company together. That's a really cool relationship to have with parent and child. And I'm really excited to see this exhibit. So thank you guys so much for chatting with me for a little bit.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for putting up with our background noise. Hope you have good editing software.
Well, we can always feature dogs. They're fine. All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Room Select, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, Brian and Emily of Sojourn Village.
Well, hello, my name is Emily Liptow,
I'm Brian Schultis.
and we are half of Sojourn. Our other collaborators are Bob Drake, who's a local improvising musician and composer, and Chrissy Martin, who is a movement and sound artist. Brian, Chrissy, and I have been in a contact improvisation dance practice for this past year, and that's where our project come from our, yeah. Ooh.
Perfect.
We got the people. That's the good stuff. Okay.
And so exactly what are you guys doing for Rooms Lit? Like, is it a performance? Is it interactive?
It is a performance, and it will be kind of lightly interactive, I would say. We'll be improvising durationally. We haven't figured out exactly the hours, if it's going to be all the time or if in long chunks, but improvising together with movement and sound, and inviting people to come in and share the space with us, and possibly to have the opportunity to, through writing or drawing or maybe photography, we have to figure some of this out, to chronicle or share some of what they're seeing in the time that they spend in there.
So Chrissy, Brian, and I are, we met through contact improvisation, which is a dance form that it is what it sounds like. That's it involves contact with other people, with other bodies, and it's an improvised form. And so it involves a lot of listening with our bodies to sensation, and to allow that to direct our dance. So without going into it with a lot of preset things, we're really listening in the moment to how our bodies are interacting. It involves, like I said, a lot of listening. It also can involve weight sharing. So we'll be lifting each other's bodies or rolling on top of each other, and also connecting to the space physically. And that's been a part of our practice in connecting to the Jeanetta building, which we'll be in. So the old insurance building at that's a part of Rooms to Let this year. And we are on the first floor and have been getting to know the space, the ground, the walls, cleaning it up, and bringing our dance practice into the space.
So when kind of going into a more improvised act of any sort, is this kind of an evolution of your own dance practices, building up to this? Because I kind of feel like, because I do music, and it takes you kind of a long time just to be able to let go in a way. And there's such an ego, not ego oh, I can do this, but mental ego that you work on certain forms and movements and whatever it may be for so long that when it comes to just dropping them, it's I think a much more difficult thing, because you've practiced how to say certain phrases or paint with certain colors.
Yeah, I think so. I think contact improvisation is a practice that each of us individually have been working on for a number of years. And I think kind of, as you said, having this relationship between building up a kind of familiarity with the physical language that it involves, but also a comfort in just letting that go and responding to what happens in the moment. And then the three of us, Emily, Chrissy, and I, started dancing together in January. And I think kind of independently from our own individual experiences with contact improvisation, that has become its kind of own thing, where we're exploring where we're going as a trio, and seeing that evolve over time as we improvise together.
And within improvisation, like dance or music, you can hear about scores, and that could be seen as sometimes an overarching structure or some kind of intention behind the improvisation. And with the three of us in moving together this past half a year, we have developed things that we tend to do or things that we like to do. And there is some kind of, we can relax into like the moment, knowing that something might happen, it might not, but we will likely find different patterns throughout our practice. And so that's, I know for me, has helped me just be more present with what's happening and not try to force something in particular to happen when we're dancing.
No, I think that's really good advice, because like if you're trying to force it, usually it biffs. You know what I mean? Usually you kind of miss a thing, or you're trying too hard and it doesn't come out right. But when it's like when you're in that state and like you're not thinking about it and everything's just right, you know. But usually that's practice. Like it's not the show. It's like
yeah. We're definitely all like committed to our process, and so I mean we're really excited to perform, and also like we know that all of the practice that we've been doing for these past few months are all a part of it, and we carry that into us. And it's kind of exciting about doing durational, where we'll have many hours to be in that space together. So something interesting will happen.
That will for sure. I guess one other just like last maybe piece of advice for like anyone in like any field, like as far as diving into just letting go for improv, do you remember maybe like your first time kind of feeling that freeness from it and being like, this is what I want to embrace more of? And like, I guess my question would be like, what would your advice be to someone who's trying to like find that courage to let go? Sorry, it's kind of a tough one, I know.
That's a great question.
We're chewing on it.
I think, especially if the feeling is kind of unfamiliar, it's a little bit, I mean, this is kind of like our answer to the last question, but it's not something you can force. And just say, I'm going to let go now. That if you're in some kind of practice, whether that's a musical improvisation practice, whether it's a dance improvisation practice like contact improvisation, if you do it, eventually you're going to, the letting go is going to find you some way or another. And you'll realize that it's happened.
And I also feel part of that feels like community. And with contact improv, that's really important, because while you can do some parts of contact improvisation by yourself, a huge part of it is dancing with other bodies. And so there becomes a point where you can't help it but to let go if you actually want to dance with someone. And just thinking of in different jam spaces, whether dance or music, where it's with other people that together you find, whether it's some kind of groove or some kind of falling apart and coming together, that we kind of learn from each other and create an environment that can nurture maybe the vulnerability that comes with letting go.
I think that's a key part, is nurturing that vulnerability. Like I think it's definitely something that it's a practice that it becomes you can get into that space quicker. And like I think what you guys said was really well said. And I really appreciate you guys chatting with me for a little bit. All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our frantic interview series. All right, up next, Jeanetta is going to tell us about her exhibit with wings.
Okay, so there's 4 pairs of wings, a pair of dragonfly wings, a pair of bird wings, a pair of butterfly wings, and a pair of bat wings. The idea was, if you wanted to be a flying creature, if you could fly, what would it be? An infinite number. It was 4. So there's a bird, dragonfly, a butterfly, and just the wings. And you can stand behind the wings and think of a picture of you with their, and you pretend to be the Jews. You could be all 4 if you want.
Gotcha. That's cool. That's what I guess to dive in, what do wings mean to you?
Oh, just like something that would help you live your life as a flying creature.
Very cool. And what kind of drove you to this project? Was there something about wings that brought it out?
I always wanted to fly. I couldn't understand why I couldn't fly. I mean, when I was 5 years old, I hurt myself trying to fly like Superman.
Yeah.
But, because at 5, you don't really understand. Well, I didn't understand those things. But I found out quick enough that it doesn't work. But I still, even after that, I mean, I understand that, I don't have wings and I can't fly. But in part of my brain says, I should be able to fly. I don't understand. I should be able to just whoosh up. And I still haven't figured that out yet. But this was like, I thought, well, maybe if you could just imagine, that would be good enough for the time being. Until we figure out how to just whoosh up, we can do this. And that could be our intermediate phase. I mean, and I think I'm not the only one, because a lot of people feel like that. Yeah. I mean, I've told people that I've always wanted to fly, and they totally get it. I mean, it's not like they look at me like I'm crazy, because I understand I have to walk on the ground and like that. I'm not delusional, but part of me says, why can't I fly?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's not. It's. We want to. That'd be sweet. You know what I mean? Like, it makes me think of that. You ever hear that Guy Clark song called "Never Leave Your Cape"?
No.
It's a song about a kid trying to fly off their garage, but trying to
That's almost like what I did. So maybe I should. I'll YouTube it. I'll look it up on the internet.
It's
never. Okay.
Awesome.
It's probably me when I was 5, except I didn't have a cape.
Original.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand why they can't fly. And maybe in a past life I was some flying creature, I don't know. But, there's different kinds of flying creatures. I think always have been for at least millennia. I mean, maybe not since the Earth first formed, but shortly after probably. And, it's just one of those things. So as an artist, I thought, well, we don't have to be bound by reality totally. We can be, it's sort of a bucket list, wanting to fly. But I don't know if I'll ever actually get to fly. I guess the museum, Natural History Museum, has a machine that will give you the sensation of being a bird, and I haven't been there yet. Yeah, they have some kind of thing, virtual reality thing.
That's
so
cool. Yeah, I haven't heard.
I need to get there. Yeah. I have. It's new. It only went in this year. So I mean, cool. Maybe 2 months ago. So I haven't. I've been kind of busy, so I haven't got to it yet. But I figured I was too busy. because I don't want to wait in line to do it. So I'm not going to go on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's
but
a good call.
I'm going to go like during the week, probably in September or October, the beginning of the school year before field trips. Just pretend to be whatever, they have.
Take off.
Because I'm not technically adept enough to make that kind of a machine. I'm an artist, I'm not.
That's a next level creation there for sure. There's a lot. But Jeanette, thank you so much. All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, Jimmie tells us how he's going to bring back The Labyrinth.
It's The Labyrinth, and it's like a art networking, art ensemble, and mixture of a lot of different art forms put together in presentation. It harkens back to what I used to do back in the early 2000s out of my parents' building. And it's going to be done out of the AMS building right here on 55th. So that'll be a nice kind of reintroduction of something that some Clevelanders actually remember. But it's great because it also brings forth newer generations, and it asks people to be creative. So not only are the artists art creators, but also audience members are asked to participate as well in the creativity.
That sounds awesome. Well, can you explain what you were doing before? Like,
what I do before?
Yeah, well, you said this is bringing it back. So can you explain like a little bit of what it was like before?
Yeah, sure. So back, what brought me back to Cleveland was, unfortunately, my dad got sick and he had colon cancer. And there was a building that we had on East 138th and Harvard that was in our family, and I worked in it for several years. But unfortunately, my dad passed away of colon cancer shortly after I came back, after I graduated from grad school at Columbia. And I knew I did not want to do what my dad did, which was run a corner store, and he sold ice cream. I'm an artist, so I decided, like, wow, I was a part of this thing when I was in New York City called Thought Forms Underground. And it was a cool, like, thing on Saturdays, last day of each month, but it only had performance artists, visual artists, and interestingly enough, culinary artists. So my thing was like, well, what if we took all these different art forms, and then I had 2 apartments above my father's, corner store, and I just opened it all up, and that made like 18 to 19 different rooms. And I just put different themes in each one and invited all these different Cleveland artists to do certain things out of each room. And then one room would be all butcher papered up, like what we have here at Rooms to Let. So people could paint, draw, put words on the wall, but I'd also have lead artists that will also encourage people to paint. And what I loved about it is it also inspired, teachers or just regular everyday people that was like, oh my God, I'm going to do the same thing at home. I'm going to make a cool, room that is just like what I experienced at the Labyrinth. And I did it for several years. Unfortunately, I had some repairs done that were kind of costly to the building. Unbeknownst to me, it compromised the foundation. I did a whole arts incubator fundraiser a few years ago, and that's what people actually really know me from a few years ago. And unfortunately, the city of Cleveland, from the work that these construction guys did, they said I had to tear the building down. And so that hurt my heart, and I've been kind of off the scene, off the grid for the last 2 years. I work at the Cleveland High School for Digital Arts, teaching film. And my students even said, like, Mr. Woody, you should do your art more. And kind of this is like bringing me back out to, pick up where I left off and bring us back from honor the past, but also honor the future.
I think that's really well said, and that's a super inspiring story about how your family building became the means for everyone else to join in and create and kind of build off. I teach as well, so it's interesting because like you need that kind of like almost open mic night. You're allowed to try something and mess up, but for like, I mean, for music and for comedy and poetry that exists, but for all the other art forms, not really.
Right.
So when you were describing that, that's kind of like the community I related to as I was building, or that you described your building, and like, and that's super important. And one thing is just to even be shown that you can do it. You can until there's a no pressure way to attempt it. So
exactly.
That's sorry.
Yeah, and what a lot of people would say is like, oh my God, it doesn't feel like I'm in Cleveland. Like I was doing this out of Ward 1 on Lee and Harvard on East 138th in Harvard, but I also put it in other places from time to time. And what got to be really cool is, especially when I was out of my father's building, people would just show up naturally on the third Saturday of each month without me even having to put out flyers. There would just be people outside my door. And what was slick about it is, what I experienced in New York is like New York, it stays open all day, all night long.
Yeah.
And so it got in such a habit that I would not say, okay, everybody's got to leave at 2. I would just be like, hey, I'm in my bedroom. Please, like, y'all can leave when y'all want to leave, but just close the door when you leave. And I would literally wake up at like 9 o'clock in the morning after a long night, and there would still be people in my building in this labyrinth talking, sharing ideas, because that was a really natural thing that I loved about it is you had people collaborating. Yeah. You had a visual artist collaborating with a filmmaker, or a dancer's collaborating with a DJ, and they're like, oh my God, I'm meeting my friend on Instagram, or I'm meeting my friend on some social networking platform. I never met him, but we're friends in social network. And so that was really nice.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's so cool, and that's so important to take it out of that. Like, it's almost like writing something down and saying it, in the digital age, is going there and meeting whatever follower and talking about their art with them. And that's such a crucial thing to grow as an artist and grow as a creator. And like
exactly.
And on your end, just let someone be, I'm going to bed, I'll see you guys. That takes a lot of trust and support and belief in what you're doing. And I'm excited to hear that you're bringing it back, or not bringing it, or bringing something
bringing
new.
it back.
Bringing something new.
Yeah.
I want to phrase it right. Bringing something new. And that's super. And a side question, I think as a teacher, if you teach a creative outlet, like I teach music, and I also play music. I'm very involved in what I like, the scene and playing and writing and doing the whole bit. And I think that it's exhausting. It makes me tired all the time, but it also kind of helps fuel that, like, I'm doing, like, what I'm saying, guys, has merit. I wouldn't just teach you nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Not only am I saying it, I'm doing it.
Right. I'm teaching you. This is what you need to know if you want to do it.
Yeah. And, and a big thing is, like, what I always gleaned out of New York, and what Cleveland does a good bit of, and reason why I really like Rooms to Let, is that I always watched certain neighborhoods, artists would come in there, do really creative things, and then all of a sudden it created a scene and people were hanging out there, and then you just see whole neighborhoods transform. I remember when I first got back here to Cleveland, like, Tremont was not a pleasant place to hang out in.
Yeah,
you didn't go to Lincoln Park at night. But now, they've really not regentrified, but they've regenerated that area, and I've always wanted that for the Lee Harvard area, which that's where my father's building was at, but then also for places like Slavic Village in Broadway. And I live on Fleet now, and I love that. And I'm like, wow, you can just see the potential that this city has, and there's a lot of talent here.
I think it's incredibly like powerful how creation and art and like brings culture into a place that maybe lost culture that was there. You know, how like how intertwined those two are, and like that. So and like the networking and the meeting of friends and like the crossing of beams, so to say, is so important. Because the
and in this, go ahead.
I was gonna say Mike nights changed my life. That's how I was able to make any of my. That's how I got my job as a teacher. Like through a Mike night. You know what I mean? So but that's the crossing of musical beams. Like so. Sorry, not to cut you off. What were you gonna say?
No, you're fine. But just to build off of that, that's even part of my story. I was an athlete.
Yeah.
You know, like I got a full football scholarship. I graduated from Orange High School, got a full football scholarship to Kent State University. All I knew is I wanted to play football. I wanted to go to NFL. And I never forget somebody asking me, like, have you ever thought about anything beyond the NFL? And I literally laughed in their face. And the next day, I broke my forearm. 3 weeks later, I tore cartilage in my knee. All this stuff that I thought I was going to do, I had to start thinking twice about it.
Yeah.
And I just was like, well, what else do I really love doing? And I knew I wanted to be creative. And out of nowhere, kind of some friends put me out on stage. And I'd never been on stage before. And I did this performance and people were like, you're an actor. And I was like, huh? And I went from there. And think about this. I graduated with an advertising degree from Kent State University. And 4 months later, I'm going to grad school at Columbia University for acting.
Jeez. Yeah.
Like that's a whirlwind.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing, the breaking of the damage and the moving from that, that emotionally is just a whirlwind enough to like get most people stuck. And I think that's so cool that you found this and now are continuing to do that.
And I pass that on to my students too. You know, like there's a life out there. There's not just what you think it is. And you just got to sometimes take steps. You got to be courageous because sometimes you don't know where it's going to land.
Right. Right.
You just got to have faith.
Exactly. And oh man. And just being able to do one thing, mess it up. Yeah, I have a lot of kids I work with that if they can't do it perfect the first time, they're out. You know what I mean? Like, oh, come on, guys. And that's it. That's life, man. You mess it up and you figure out where you're gonna go.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'd say a buddy of mine in the recording industry, he just said something that was really profound. A couple of weeks ago, he's like, I want everybody to fail.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want you to be a failure. You need to fail in life in order to grow. And I was like, wow, that was really great.
Yeah.
And it gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's wild. It's one of those things like when I think we kind of hear that advice all the time, but once you go through it and once you surpassed it, like maybe your experience wasn't like seeing it as that, but maybe later looking back, you're like, I guess I did biff that and now I got this. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like when you're on that ride, it's really hard to like kind of step back. But when you do, it's like, just like you said, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. You're like, man. And I just, and I just try to pass that on to kids and and you work with kids. And I have some kids that have dealt with trauma and in trying to give them healthy ways to deal with it, or that anger or that angst or this situation is you can be creative. Take all that energy, take all that angst and put it into something creative. And then sometimes you might be like, oh my God, I was angry as all get up, but this is a really cool, profound piece. Maybe not for everybody else, but at least for me.
Right. Right. It's seeing the power within that is really important. And that's, oh man, I'm excited to meet you. This is awesome.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, hey, thank you so much for chatting with me, my friend, and I'll catch you on the Saturday. Is there any other thing that you have planned after Rooms to Let, or people can find out?
Well, yeah, after Rooms to Let, what actually was a really cool thing is because I am a film teacher, and I'm gonna be filming this.
Oh, cool.
Labyrinth. So I really want that to be the initial kind of formulating what I'm doing with my lab, because I want to do it kind of as a podcast or something that I can do it on a monthly basis, that it can be captured.
Yeah.
Even if it's out of my own apartment or we're on a corner and we're doing a lab. Because to me, like the lab for me is like an amoeba. It takes the form of wherever it's at.
I think that's that's cool. So we'll keep on the lookout for a podcast or a streaming thing, or I think that's an excellent way to do it and to reach more people. You can get people out of the state that way.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Sick. Yeah. Thank you, Owen. I appreciate you.
All right, man. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at Rooms to Let.
Thank you, too. Appreciate you.
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next is Jacob with Chimera the Labyrinth.
Well, my name is Jacob Liptow, and my project is titled Chimera the Labyrinth, and I'm on the second floor of the Columbia building. Right. Well, I'm currently working on it right now, so it is becoming. But Chimera, well, it finds its, purpose or backing in the idea of comparative theology. So I'm looking at the idea that all people of different religions can learn and grow from the traditions and practices of others. It finds its form in a labyrinth, which is a concrete example of an object or practice that exists across many different religions. There's the labyrinths of Greek mythology. It exists in Hinduism with mandalas and yantras and those symbols. It's also in Celtic knots and Chinese knots and a lot of different visual representations in other religions. So I'm taking that as kind of the basis of it and overlaying this artistic idea of different religions coming together in oneness. And a chimera is a term that is referred to something that is kind of a conglomeration of things. In Greek mythology, it refers to a beast that kind of comes together with body parts from different animals. And it also has this feeling of like a fever dream or of fantastical illusion, I guess. So that's the energy that I'm trying to bring to this labyrinth. I guess
that's fascinating. Yeah. That's really it's interesting because a lot of like philosophies and sayings and morals and stuff overlap in different religions and practices, but I never thought about the like those that symbolic the knot in the labyrinth and the sorry, that's what it's called, but the mandalas and all those, like that's a really interesting like clear view of how similar all these differences are. I guess like structurally, like looking at these images of these, what have you noticed? Is it all they're kind of round? Like I'm trying to think. All these symbols are usually circular. Is there any other things you've noticed through like kind of studying these?
Well, something about labyrinths is that they all have a very dictated path. So I think when we think of labyrinths, sometimes we compare them to mazes, but mazes, like a corn maze, are full of dead ends, and it's all about confusion and not exactly knowing where you're going. But a labyrinth is, it's sort of a meditative rhythm. And I'm taking a little bit of liberties. There's multiple paths within mine. However, there's no dead ends, and no one should get lost, hopefully. But when you look at, say, Sri yantras in Hinduism, they are more of a visual labyrinth, although they can exist on floors and you can walk over them. But they depict a specific path towards enlightenment. At least that's how I perceive them. And the labyrinths that are in Western society are similarly more about a meditative experience, but it has this strict path that you follow that brings anyone who enters it into a meditative kind of culmination. And you find that within yourself. That's kind of the core of them. A lot of labyrinths don't have really a beginning or end. I'm taking some liberties with it, of course, but yeah, and you can get really deep, finding the different comparisons between religions. It goes far beyond just, this exhibit, but yeah. I'm trying to touch on a lot of different aspects.
I think when you can visually see something like that and like see it across all these different like mythologies and like pantheons of different religions, it really brings a highlighted point to diving into those similarities and differences.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I guess,
thank you.
I guess kind of on the idea of like, do they all like kind of serve the purpose? Because I don't know, like, of like this kind of traveling through life. Like I don't know much about the Celtic knot, and I don't know much. Like I know the mandalas serve just kind of a meditative practice. Do they all kind of have that lingering practice theme across them, or is
I think a lot of them. Well, you kind of take from it what you will, and that's definitely true with the labyrinths that you'll see in Christian theologies, like in cathedrals in France and around the world. They don't have a specific meaning or purpose, except it's to help find something within yourself. And the meanings and variances are different across different religions, but they do all symbolize some form of realization, I guess, is what I would say.
That's fascinating. Very cool. Hey, well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me, and I'm looking forward to checking out your exhibit at Rooms to Let.
Yeah, thank you so much. One thing I would like to add is I've been working with no, you're good. I've been working with Rust Belt Riders in Cleveland, a local composting organization, and they're helping me ensure that this entire exhibit will be compostable at the end. So that's a big part of this, is that it's kind of from the earth and will return from the earth. It's all made of bamboo, paper, and twine. So, that thinking about the whole life cycle of the exhibit itself, that's something I folded into it, and they'll have some information up around the exhibit as well.
That's incredible. Like that's the next level. I don't know. A lot of times you don't really think about that when you leave, and I think that's really cool that you take an extra step. And metaphorically, it kind of fits with everything. The other thing I was going to ask was, where can we find past and future upcoming projects you have, like a website, or if you have anything you want to plug on the top?
Yeah. Well, another thing I'm involved in right now is through the Heights Art Collaborative, Collaborage, and they picked 12 artists in Northeast Ohio, and they've paired us up to create 3 works of art per group based on the idea of surrealism. So that'll be opening in August at Cleveland Heights Art. And I mean, there's always more on the horizon. I'm hoping that this labyrinth doesn't immediately get composted, but can be, perhaps installed at a few other places before eventually being laid to rest, I guess. So it may have a second life, but to be determined.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, and I'll catch you at Rooms to Let.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, we check in with Weramoos.
Hey, that's great. That's cool. So, first, my name is Clifford Benjamin Herring. I go by Ben. My parents just had high expectations. And I'm the coordinator for the movement band, Making Our Own Space. We work with kids around the city, various different neighborhoods, approximately 8 so far. Around the city, talking to students about what they want to see in their neighborhoods, and then we provide them with the resources and skills to help design and build it. But I'm also here with David, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is David Meglin. I'm the assistant here, and my background is in design and construction, so I'm bringing those skills forward to help facilitate Ben's needs with moves and to work with children.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And so we've been working here in Slavic Village. This is our second year at the rec center here, which has been a great partner for us. The Stella Walsh Rec Center, George and his staff is incredible. Ant in particular, I feel like deserves a shout out. He was also an artist at the Rooms to Let event last year, actually. So, but what we plan to do, hey, I didn't mean to speak over you there, Ben. But yeah, like we're actually really excited this year to kind of come back. Last year, the students built some works that ended up on 55th, kind of in a vacant lot there that's become a garden. We built some seating that would help to kind of support the use of that garden, as well as some lighting for nighttime events to kind of hold the edge of the sidewalk there, and a small stage that people could use, which actually got its first use during Rooms to Let last year. It was actually, I think we finished it 2 days before the drum team came over to use it for the Rooms to Let event. And so that's actually been cool to see people making use of the stage, and even some of our own kids have sent us pictures back later on, like dancing on it and doing their own things with it. This year is a little bit different. We have a different group of kids. We have a couple returning from last year and a number that are new. And so with the new students, we've taken another walk down the corridor and asked them about what they saw and what they saw need for. And we've gotten a few kind of collections of ideas. But all of our ideas this year versus the stage or the lighting last year have been really more directed at different creative ways to provide places for people to rest. And this had some measurements to sizes and ages. So one of our groups was interested in having a seat that had different heights so that people of different age groups would have a seat that fit for them. Another one of our groups was interested in just people being able to sit together. So they built a bench that, and this is one of our groups that's actually returning members, which was interesting, is that last year, this same team built a bench, but just for one person. And after they finished building it, realized they wanted to sit together with the rest of their team. And so they asked us to build a bench. We have designed a bench with them. They can fit multiple. Another one of our newest groups, which has actually been really cool, is to see how these teams have kind of come together. But they started independently, working where one group wanted to build a chair that would allow for them to have some storage underneath, so that like if they ever had a move night out there on the square or something like that, that they would have a place to store their bags or store their snacks underneath their chair, which was pretty clever. A separate group, though, was kind of looking at doing a bit of a smaller project. That is to say, something that was, easy for them to kind of wrap their hands around and that they could confidently finish. And they're a newer group of students, so we kind of tried to work with them and made sense of that. At the end of the day, though, it looks like we'll actually be putting both those projects together so that our first kind of lounge chair can also have an ottoman for people to kick their feet up with. So that's also something that's been kind of exciting, is to see how the individual interests of the groups and slowly and progressively begin to rework into a common effort and a kind of a team-based project where all the projects have a bit of operate as kind of a family. So that's some of the things we're working on right now, which we are truly designing and building them with the students as we speak. So today was like our second day of actual construction, and past our design days of last week and earlier this week. And we'll be spending the rest of this week and next week actually kind of finishing the fabrication of these projects that the students have ideated over the last few days.
That's incredible. And it's so empowering to like build something to actually make it come into reality. You know what I mean? Like that's what me and Dave were kind of talking about before you hopped on. Like to actually see it come into existence is really especially for a kid who's never done something like that. To know that they can actually change the world they're in, even by just compiling something to make it useful, is such a strong feeling to be able to have, to be able to know you can do.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. So appreciated. Thank you.
Well,
really appreciate you pointing that out.
I'm really excited to see what you guys and what the students make for Rooms to Let, and I appreciate your time, my friends.
Hey, thank you too, man. We're super excited about it. Can't say enough for how much we appreciate the CDC and Lynn and all the work you guys have been doing to build the stage for all of us artists to be involved. And I agree with you, man. Like most of the kids we work with have never even used a power drill. And so to be able to have an audience for their work so quickly is really obviously something that I think really truly does make a difference, and it's something we really appreciate your partnership in making possible. So, thank you guys so much. It's really cool.
Awesome. Well, I'll catch you at Rooms to Let. What's the if people want to get involved? What's the website they can go to get involved with you guys?
Hey, that's great. Totally a fair question. We have a few kind of places. We got an Instagram, so We Are Moose. It's kind of our tagline there. But then also we have a website, so wearemoose.org. Is where you can kind of check out our programs, so the history of what we've done, other locations where we've done work, as well as potential future opportunities to get students involved in various locations across the city.
All right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more. All right, Zig from Zig at the Gig. You're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. Here at Rooms to Let, inspiration can be found anywhere. We're going to take a moment to learn about one of our artists with our Frantic interview series. Up next, we talk to Kate Snow with No Barriers.
So my name is Kate Snow, and I am collaborating with Becky Rinaldi and members of PLAN, which is part of JFSA. And those are individuals with mental illness, cognitive disability, autism spectrum disorder, and on and on. So that's the group that I'm working with. Yeah, I can. So we wanted to highlight disability. It's an experience that I have, and I worked with these folks because it's something that they experience every day as well. And we wanted to talk about barriers to accessibility for people with disabilities. I think a lot of times when we think about disability, we think about people in wheelchairs who need ramps, or people who have hearing impairment who need ASL interpreters. And that's true, but it is much, much broader than that. And so we wanted to look at things like stigma, like hidden disabilities, things like that. And so what we did was we took portraits of the people we were working with and some other people. And those are going to be hung on the inside of the windows facing out. So if you just walk past the window, you would see these great portraits behind the glass. What we're going to do, though, is cover those with sheets of paper that have barriers on them. And these are barriers that were articulated and drawn by the folks in PLAN. And so those are going to be covering up the people. And we'll be inviting guests at Rooms to Let to tear down those barriers. And the idea is that if everybody helps, if everyone's involved, we can get rid of the barriers and see the people who are behind them. And that's really it. It's a pretty straightforward project.
Yeah, that's really powerful, though. That's a great idea, and it gets everyone involved in. And just like it would have, like on the social aspect of it, to remove this stigma, that's how you would do that with everyone partaking and seeing what's behind. That's really cool.
We're really excited about it because I think a big part of it is normalizing it, especially for people who are dealing with neurodivergence or mental issues or depression, things like that. There's so much stigma around it. And if we don't normalize it, we're not going to get more people to come around to helping dismantle it. So we're excited about it.
That's awesome. Is this what kind of brought about this idea? Was it the environment, checking out the space you guys got, or is this something you had kind of planned and waiting for an event like this?
Well, when Rooms to Let came up again, and I did it years and years ago and haven't since. And so Becky, my collaborator, brought it to me and said, hey, do you want to do this? And she had some ideas, and we talked about a bunch of things, and we decided that if we could, we wanted to find a storefront, because we initially wanted to really talk about visibility and invisibility, because disabled folks often experience and talk about being both extremely conspicuous and being sort of looked at, stared at, evaluated, and being invisible, being ignored and sidelined and sort of stepped around. And we wanted to play with that idea. And then when we saw the space and we started talking more with the folks at PLAN, we wanted to talk more about barriers specifically. And that's what brought this around. And the space that we got is really perfect for this. It's the right size, it's got great visibility, and it's accessible for everyone to get to and participate in.
That's awesome. How long have you been working with Becky?
We've been friends for a really long time. And so we've been talking about me coming in to do something with her group for a while and just hadn't really settled on what to do. They do a bunch of art projects. That's really her area, and that's what she works on with people, doing a lot of art therapy. And so this is the first opportunity that we've had to collaborate in this way. But it's gone really great. Everyone that I've worked with has been amazing. And I'm super excited because I think that a number of the folks that have been part of this are going to be able to be there for some of the time, either Saturday or Sunday. So people will actually get a chance to talk to them. Because that's a big part of it is in normalizing this, it's talking to people who are experiencing this every day.
Right. No, that's super empowering, and I can't wait to see it. And I think that's just like you said, like, it's interesting. It's once people get past, like, I get how you said it before, either trying to walk around or trying to analyze and just talk to people as people. That's where the whole project, you're removing those barriers, and that's so cool. This is going to be a really empowering event, and like, it's cool that everyone who comes by gets to partake in it.
I'm really interested to see what kind of audience engagement we get. I'm hoping that a bunch of people get excited about it and want to participate, because I think that it is an area worth focusing on, worth highlighting, and worth talking about.
Well, agreed. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me. And all right, you're listening to 93.9 WRTL The Bug. That was another installation of our Frantic Artist interviews. Stay tuned for more.